When you begin to detach from someone, you are embarking on a journey of rediscovery of yourself. You see, often in our relationships we lose sight of who we are. We become so focused on the other person, their needs, their feelings, their desires, that we forget what makes us unique, what makes us whole. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of seeking approval, searching for validation, and measuring our worth through someone else's eyes. And while connection with others is beautiful, it should never come at the expense of our own identity. Detaching, however, creates the space to step back and remember who we are when we're not defined by someone else's presence or absence. It's in this moment of letting go that we have the opportunity to reconnect with our true selves. You begin to prioritize what you need, what you desire, what fulfills you on your own terms. For too long, many of us live with the mistaken belief that we must give, sacrifice, and bend to make someone else happy, thinking that's the way to earn love. But when you detach, you remember that love is not about losing yourself to another person. It's about keeping yourself whole, maintaining your integrity, and honoring your own worth. Now, this isn't about selfishness or shutting others out. It's about creating a healthy balance between giving to others and giving to yourself. Imagine standing at the center of your life with a deep understanding that your value is intrinsic, not dependent on the approval of a roughened person. This shift in perspective is transformative. When you begin to detach from someone, you start to honor your own needs, desires, and passions in a way that allows you to grow, to flourish, and to live a life that is authentically your own. Detachment does not mean you stop caring, or that you walk away from meaningful connections. It means you stop depending on others to define your happiness. You stop relying on external sources to fill an internal void. And in that space of self-reliance, you rediscover the things that bring you joy outside of a relationship. You reconnect with your hobbies, your ambitions, your sense of adventure, your creativity. You realize that the person you are is complete, regardless of who else is in your life. And from this place of wholeness, you naturally attract more positive experiences and relationships into your life. When you detach, it's like shedding the layers of dependence you've built over time, the layers that have clouded your view of who you truly are. It's like stepping out of the fog and seeing clearly for the first time in years. The beauty of this process is that you start to see the world around you from a fresh perspective. You no longer feel the need to cling to someone for validation or love. Instead, you start to realize that you are capable of standing on your own, of nurturing your own sense of self-worth. Detachment, in this sense, is not a withdrawal or rejection. It's a return to yourself. It's a return to your core, to the person you were before you became wrapped up in the complexities and niceties of others. When you detach, you create space to heal, to grow, and to align with your true purpose. You stop trying to please everyone, and instead you start pleasing yourself. You stop chasing after love or approval because you realize you are worthy of it simply by being you. As you give yourself permission to detach, you will begin to notice a shift within. The fear of being alone, of not being loved, begins to fade. The anxious thoughts that once clouded your mind start to dissolve. You begin to understand that you are enough just as you are, and with this realization comes a newfound sense of confidence and peace. You are no longer seeking validation from someone else because you've learned to validate yourself. You stop looking for approval because you know deep down that you are worthy without it. So by detaching from someone, you're not losing anything. In fact, you're gaining everything: your sense of self, your independence, your peace, and most importantly, your self-love. This process allows you to stand tall in your own power, to move through life with a sense of confidence and clarity that is rooted in your own truth. When you rediscover your value, you become a magnet for the kind of relationships that honor and respect you for the person you truly are. You become the kind of person others are naturally drawn to, someone who is secure, grounded, and whole. And when you can stand firm in your own value, when you can walk through life with the understanding that you are enough, you'll find that you no longer need to chase after anyone. Instead, people will be drawn to your energy, to your authenticity, and to the peace you radiate. Now remember this, the most powerful thing you can do for yourself is to step back, detach, and rediscover the incredible person you are. From there, everything else falls into place. When you begin to detach from someone, it's not about turning your back on them. It's not about cutting them off or turning cold. No, detachment is about giving yourself the space to breathe, to reclaim your own energy, and to center yourself. It's about understanding that you are whole on your own. When you become too entangled in another person's emotions, expectations, or actions, you start to lose touch with the most important part of yourself, your own inner peace. And it's in that peace where your true power lies. Now, when you detach, you allow yourself to let go of all the unnecessary attachments, the beliefs and stories you've created around the relationship, the expectations that perhaps were never even real in the first place. So often we become attached to an idea, to a version of the relationship we think should exist instead of what truly is. We start to believe that love must look a certain way, that connection must be defined by constant interaction, by endless communication, by the need to please, to cater, to satisfy. But what happens when we take a step back? When we stop trying to force something into a mold that doesn't fit? The truth is, detaching allows the relationship to breathe. And by breathing, I mean it allows both you and the other person to grow, to explore who you are outside of each other. When you cling to someone, when you cling to anything, you suffocate it. There's no room for growth. There's no room for change. You start to drown in expectations, in the need for constant validation, and that's not a healthy way to live. Detachment, then, freedom not from the other person, but from the constant need for validation, approval, or affection. It's the freedom to step back, observe, and realize that your value, your happiness, does not depend on anyone else. And when you experience this freedom, you begin to unlock your true potential. You can start to look at the world, at your relationships, at yourself with fresh eyes. You no longer base your self-worth on how someone else feels about you, how they behave toward you, or whether they are there for you. You are no longer waiting for someone else's actions to determine your mood or your state of mind. The beauty of detachment is that it puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. It allows you to choose how you want to respond, how you want to behave, and how you want to feel. You're not being pulled along by the whims of others. Instead, you're standing strong in your own energy, your own confidence, your own clarity. It's like taking the reins of your life back from someone who may have been steering you in a direction that wasn't truly yours to begin with. But here's where things get interesting. When you stop trying so hard, when you give yourself the space to breathe, you stop coming across as desperate or needy. And without that neediness, without that dependence, you become infinitely more attractive, not because you're doing anything different, but because you are no longer seeking anything from them. You're no longer playing a game of trying to prove your worth. You are standing in your own power. And in doing so, you allow them to come back to you not out of obligation or guilt, but because they see you for who you truly are. They see you as someone who has their own life, their own passions, their own dreams. Their own dreams. They see someone who is whole on their own. This is one of the most powerful shifts that can happen in any relationship when you stop chasing and start allowing the relationship to develop naturally. allowing it to grow on its own, sown, free from the pressure, free from the constraints of your own need to control or manage it. And in that space, both you and the other person have the opportunity to discover the relationship anew. Now here's another key insight. Detaching from someone also helps you become more aware of what you truly want. When you are so entangled in someone else's life, it becomes difficult to hear your own desires, your own needs, and your own instincts. Detachment gives you the clarity to step back and look at the relationship as it is, without any of the illusions you've created. And in doing so, you gain the wisdom to see whether it's truly serving you, whether or not it's truly aligned with your values and goals, or if it's simply holding you back. You begin to understand whether this connection is something you want to nurture or whether it's time to move on. You start to see what is truly important to you and what you're willing to accept or compromise on. Detachment allows you to regain control over your own emotions, your own life, your own future. And in that sense, detachment is not about loss, it's about gain. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of yourself and what you want out of life. It's about realizing that while relationships are important, they are not the sole source of your happiness or identity. You are enough, just as you are. And when you realize this, you begin to move through life with a quiet confidence, a grace that comes from knowing your own worth. When you detach, you don't lose the relationship. In fact, you gain the opportunity for a deeper, more meaningful connection. You create space for the other person to see you as you truly are, not as someone who needs them, but as someone who chooses them. And in that space, they are more likely to return to you, not because they are compelled to, but because they genuinely want to. Ultimately, detaching from someone is not about letting go of love or connection. It's about letting go of neediness, of desperation, and of the fear that if you don't cling, you'll lose them. You'll lose them. When you let go of those attachments, you free both yourself and the other person to experience love in its purest form. And that is when the magic truly happens. When we detach from someone, something profound happens within ourselves. We realize, perhaps for the first time, that our happiness does not hinge on another person's actions, words, or presence. So often we are conditioned to believe that love and connection require constant efficient, constant pursuit, constant giving. We chase, we seek approval, we strive to please, to fill the gaps in someone else's life. But what happens when we stop? What happens when we shift our attention inward, focusing on our own well-being rather than constantly worrying about someone else's? The first thing we notice is the freedom that comes with detachment. When we step away from the need to control or influence someone else's feelings or actions, we begin to reconnect with ourselves in a way that is both liberating and empowering. This is not to say that we stop caring or stop loving, but rather we stop putting our worth in the hands of others. We stop defining our happiness by someone else's affection or attention. In doing so, we unlock a deeper understanding of who we are and what we truly need. Think about it for a moment. How often do we let someone's indifference, their silence, their actions dictate how we feel? We can get lost in their mood swings, in their attention or lack of it, and before we know it, our emotions are no longer our own. But when we detach, we return to the truth of our own feelings, our own desires, and our own identity. We stop becoming a reflection of someone else's behavior, and instead we find clarity in the stillness that emerges when we no longer feel the need to chase after approval or affection. This is not about withdrawing love or shutting someone out. It's about stepping into a place of strength, of independence. It's about recognizing that our self-worth, our peace, is not dependent on the other person. You see, when we are constantly chasing, constantly seeking validation, we send out an energy that is rooted in need. And people, whether we realize it or not, can feel that neediness. And that neediness can push them away, not because they don't care, but because it's overwhelming. When you detach, you stop coming from a place of desperation, a place of trying to fix, change, or manipulate a relationship. You stop making them the center of your universe. Instead, you stand strong in your own sense of self. It is in this space that real attraction begins to build, not because you are doing anything special or extraordinary, but because you are simply being you. You are no longer acting out of fear or insecurity, but from a place of peace, of completeness. And that is magnetic. In this detachment, something extraordinary occurs. You begin to see the relationship not through the lens of need, but from a clearer perspective. You observe without the heavy emotions clouding your judgment. You begin to understand whether the connection is one that truly serves both of you, whether it's rooted in mutual respect and genuine care, or whether it's been built on something more superficial, something that was never going to last. Detachment allows you to assess the relationship from a place of clarity, not desperation. And it allows the other person to do the same. They are not burdened by your need for constant reassurance, your desire for them to fill the empty spaces within you. Instead, they are allowed to see you as you are strong, independent, whole. Detachment is the key that opens the door to healthier, more authentic connections. It invites a sense of mutual respect, of shared space, and of individuality. Rather than codependence, detachment allows you to coexist without suffocating each other, without imposing your needs on one another. It's like two trees growing in the same forest. Side by side, their roots independent, yet their branches intertwining in a dance of mutual support. Each stands strong on its own, but together they form something more beautiful than either could alone. And here's the paradox: when you detach, when you stop seeking, you often find that what you were afraid to lose is the very thing that begins to come back to you. Not out of obligation or guilt, but because you've stopped trying so hard. You've stopped demanding. And in that space, they can finally see you, really see you, for the person you truly are. Without the weight of your expectations hanging over them, they are free to experience you in a new light. But the most important shift, the one that makes all the difference, is this: in detaching, you find peace. You find your own center. You realize that your happiness is yours to create, not something that is dependent on the actions or attention of none other. When you understand this, you stop chasing, you stop clinging, and you allow everything to fall into place in its own time. You see, detachment isn't about abandon or rejection. It's about allowing things to unfold naturally. It's about recognizing that love and connection aren't something that can be forced. They are something that grows, nurtured by mutual respect and freedom. And the best part? You begin to realize that whether or not the other person returns to you, whether or not they come back into your life in the way you once hoped, you are whole. You are complete. You are enough, just as you are. And in that realization, you find a deep, abiding peace that no person, no situation can ever take away. When you detach, you stop chasing. And in that stillness, everything you truly need finds its way back to you. When you begin to detach from the desire to control or force the outcome of a relationship, something remarkable starts to happen. You stop trying to orchestrate every detail, every interaction, and you begin to feel a sense of relief. It's like stepping out of a suffocating room and taking a deep, fresh breath. Suddenly, there is space to think clearly, to feel deeply, and to reconnect with your own needs and desires, not in the context of someone else's behavior or responses, but simply as your own. This is the first part of the shift, the release. It's not just about letting go of the other person's control over you. It's about releasing your own control over the situation. when you're no longer trying to hold on so tightly to something that may not be serving you. You allow space for everything else to breathe. The other person, too, feels that relief. When we constantly push, when we continually show how much we need them, the energy we send out is one of desperation. And just like anything else in life, desperation isn't magnetic, it repels. But when you detach, when you let go of that energy, you allow room for something new to unfold. It's also in this detachment that you stop seeking validation from the outside. So often we define our self-worth by how others treat us, by how much attention or affection we receive. But when we detach, we step away from that need. You stop tying your value to someone's affection, and you begin to realize that your worth was never dependent on anyone but you. This shift in perspective is incredibly liberating. Without that constant desire for external validation, you reclaim your peace. You stop chasing, stop asking for reassurance, stop worrying if you're doing enough. And in this freedom, you begin to thrive. When you detach, you no longer rely on someone else to fill you up or tell you who you are. You stand firm in your own identity. And that, my friends, is the most attractive energy you can have. But the most profound part of detaching isn't just about your own personal peace. It's about the space it creates for the other person. When you detach, you stop burdening the relationship with unrealistic expectations, with pressure to perform, with constant demands. Instead, you allow the connection to breathe, to grow in its own time, to evolve naturally. There is a certain beauty in this process, in giving the other person the freedom to come and go as they need. It allows for a more authentic connection to form, a connection not based on what you want or what you think you need, but on what is genuinely shared in the moment. Our people, like all living things, need space to grow. They need the freedom to make their own choices, to discover their own feelings. When we give them that space, we show them respect, not just for who they are, but for the process they're going through. Relationships are not one-sided. When we constantly hold on, cling to someone's every move, we fail to recognize that they too need time to process, to reflect, and to decide what they truly want. But what happens when you stop clinging? When you give them the freedom to be who they are, without the pressure of your desires hanging over them? Well, in many cases they begin to realize what they've been missing. They start to see the value in the connection that was once there. When you detach, you no longer take them for granted. They no longer take you for granted. There is a shift, a moment of clarity, where they can see you not as someone who is constantly in pursuit, but as someone who is standing in their own power, living their own life. And it's in this clarity that something magical happens. The energy between the two of you changes. No longer are you trying to fill an empty space within yourself through them. You are whole. You are complete. And when you are whole, you are no longer dependent on them to validate your worth or define your happiness. And in that you become a mirror for them, a mirror that reflects not only who you are, but who they are as well. This is when true attraction begins to develop. Not the kind of attraction that is born from need, but the kind that is born from freedom. The kind that comes when two people, not clinging to one another, but living their own lives, come together as equals with respect and love for what they both bring to the table. When you detach, you stop being a source of anxiety for them. Instead, you become a symbol of peace, of someone who knows how to stand on their own, who isn't afraid to live life fully, regardless of whether or not they are there to share it. This is the power of detachment, not just for your own peace, but for the relationship itself. It invites a deeper, more authentic connection to form. But perhaps most importantly, detaching teaches you a profound lesson about yourself. It teaches you that your happiness does not depend on anyone else. It teaches you that love is not a transaction, a negotiation. It's not about giving just to receive or about controlling outcomes. Love is about freedom. It's about recognizing that we are all whole and complete, that we do not need anyone to complete us, but that we are capable of creating something beautiful with others from a place of strength and peace. So when you detach, you step into your own power. You stop seeking, stop chasing, and in that stillness you find everything you need. You no longer beg for affection or fight for attention. You stand in the truth of who you are, and when the time is right, you will find that everything you need comes back to you, not because you sought it, but because you stopped seeking, and in that you find peace, true peace. The peace that comes when you no longer need anything, but simply allow what is meant for you to find its way back to you. The greatest gift you can give both yourself and the other person is this space. Space to be, space to grow, space to truly see each other for who you both are, and not just as an answer to one another's need. And in that space, you will find the beauty of true connection. When you detach from the constant need to keep someone close, a space of incredible transformation opens up. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. It's a little unsettling, isn't it? The idea that we should let go of our expectations, our desires, our constant seeking. It feels counterintuitive. Society teaches us that in order to hold on to something or someone, we must cling, we must pursue, we must prove our worth through our actions. But when we let go of that need to control, something begins to shift. We find that we are not defined by the things or people around us. We find that there is a deeper peace, one that is not reliant on another person's presence, attention, or approval. When you step back, you create the room to breathe. You stop living in reaction to the other person's behavior. You stop measuring your own worth based on their responses. This is not to say that the connection fades or that you should distance yourself emotionally. Rather, what happens is a deepening of the connection, a strengthening of the relationship with yourself first. It's about finding peace in your own life, in your own energy, and inviting the other person to join you in that space rather than dragging them into it. And here's the truly remarkable part. When you detach from the expectation of an outcome, you stop living with anxiety. You stop obsessing over how to make someone stay, how to make them feel the way you want them to feel. You release the tension that you've been carrying, the tension that's been building every time you try to keep things a certain way. When you let go, you are free. You stop living in anticipation of what will happen next. Instead, you allow things to unfold as they will, with no pressure, no urgency. The irony is, when you stop needing someone to act in a certain way, you create the space for them to come toward you naturally on their own terms. This space is sacred. It's a space where you get to explore who you truly are without anyone else's influence. It's a space where your sense of self-worth is no longer tied to the attention, affection, or validation you get from others. This space is where your inner strength begins to emerge. It's in this space that you rediscover your own needs, your own passions, your own sense of direction. You realize that you don't need anyone to complete you. You are complete already. But at first, it's easy to mistake this detachment for indifference, or worse, for a lack of caring. But detachment is not about indifference. It's about acknowledging your own needs and desires, while also honoring the other person's journey. It's about recognizing that we all need space to grow. When you stop demanding that someone be a certain way, you allow them the freedom to be exactly who they are. And when you give them that freedom, they begin to appreciate you more. There's no longer the pressure to fit into an ideal mold. Instead, the relationship can evolve naturally, without the burden of expectations weighing it down. When you detach in this way, the relationship becomes a mutual exchange of energy, not a one-sided pursuit. Both individuals are free to be themselves without the fear of judgment or rejection. You find yourself in a place of peace and acceptance, where you no longer worry about the future of the relationship, because you trust that whatever is meant to be will be. You are no longer chasing validation, nor are you afraid of losing something. You trust that the connection is strong enough to withstand any challenges, and if it's not, you know you will be okay regardless. What happens when you create this space for both yourself and the other person is that the energy of the relationship shifts. Rather than one person being the source of happiness or fulfillment for the other, both people begin to recognize that they are already whole. They don't need to complete one another. Instead, they are free to explore what makes them happy individually, and then come together to share that happiness. This kind of connection is infinitely more powerful than one that is built on need or dependence. It's built on mutual respect, understanding, and freedom. When you detach from the need to control, you allow the possibility of something far more meaningful to unfold. You create a bond that is based not on expectation, but on acceptance. You create space for growth, for exploration, for real connection. This is the power of detachment. It's the power of standing in your own worth without needing anyone else to validate it. It's the power of knowing that you are enough, and that anyone who is meant to be in your life will choose to be there, not because you force them, but because they see your worth as clearly as you do. And so, as you let go, as you detach, you begin to see the world in a new light. You begin to see relationships not as things to be controlled or manipulated, but as beautiful connections that grow and evolve naturally. The people in your life become a reflection of your own growth and you theirs. There is no longer a sense of urgency, no longer a need to cling. There is only trust in the process and the journey, and in the knowledge that what is meant for you will never pass you by. And when you stop chasing, you'll find that everything you desire finds its way back to you. So let go, step back, create that space, and in that space you will find peace. When we stop attaching ourselves to outcomes, to the need for validation, and to the way we think things should unfold, we enter a state of surrender, a state where we let life flow rather than pushing it in a direction. It's not an act of giving up, it's an act of trust. We trust that everything is unfolding as it should, that the universe or life itself knows better than we do the perfect timing for things to come into. When we detach, we begin to realize that the obsession with control, whether it's over our relationships, our futures, or our own self-worth, keeps us stuck in a cycle of anxiety and expectation. An expectation. We become so focused on how we want things to be that we forget to be in the moment, to just live and experience life as it is. In this state of detachment, we give up our need to constantly monitor the relationship, the situation, or the other person. It's not that we stop caring, it's that we stop relying on external validation to determine our internal state of being. So often we invest our happiness in another person's response to us. We wait for their acknowledgement, their praise, their recognition to confirm that we are worthy, that we are valuable. But what happens when we detach is that we stop needing that confirmation. We realize that we are already whole, already enough, already worthy, without anyone else's permission. This shift is powerful because it comes from a place of inner strength and self-assurance. No longer do we look outside ourselves to define who we are or how we should feel. We are the source of our own energy, of our own contentment. And when we stop attaching ourselves to the external world for validation, we open ourselves up to the richness of life itself. We begin to experience the beauty of what is, rather than constantly trying to bend it to our will. The truth is, when we detach, we create the space for something deeper to emerge. This doesn't mean we become indifferent or cold. It means we allow ourselves to live authentically, without the fear of rejection or the need for others to approve of us. We begin to appreciate the moment as it is, without judgment, without expectation. In relationships, this means we let go of the pressure to perform, to impress, or to fit into some preconceived notion of what the relationship should look like. Instead, we allow the relationship to evolve organically, free from the weight of our expectations. By detaching in this way, we stop playing games or trying to manipulate outcomes. We stop holding on to a version of someone or something that we've created in our minds. We let go of the fantasy and begin to see people for who they truly are. And paradoxically, when we stop trying to control the relationship or the other person, we make space for a more authentic connection to grow. When we trust that the right people will show up for us, when we stop chasing them, we find ourselves surrounded by more meaningful, genuine connections. These are the relationships that are grounded in mutual respect and love, not need, not fear, but freedom. The beauty of detachment is that it allows us to experience life fully without being overly attached to any particular outcome. It frees us from the constant cycle of worry and doubt. When we stop forcing things, we start to see the world more clearly. We begin to observe the flow of life, how it ebbs and wanes, how things come and go in their own time. The people we need in our lives will come when the time is right. And the people who are meant to stay will stay, not because we clung to them, but because they found value in being with us just as we are. This doesn't mean we stop caring about others, or that we become cold. It simply means we stop seeking our worth through their responses or actions. It means we stop putting ourselves in a position where we are constantly at the mercy of others for our emotional well-being. We become the center of our own emotional universe, and from this position of inner strength and self-assurance, we can engage with others without fear, without desperation, and without need. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means that we stop relying on external factors to dictate how we feel. It's an active decision to release the need to control, the need to hold on tightly. It's a conscious choice to live fully in the present moment, to give ourselves the freedom to be ourselves, and to allow the people around us to do the same. When we do this, we find that life begins to flow effortlessly. We stop swimming against the current, and we begin to flow with it. This is the power of detachment. It's not about rejecting others or distancing ourselves from love and connection. It's about creating a relationship with ourselves that is grounded in acceptance and peace. It's about understanding that our worth is inherent, and that we don't need to grasp or chase after anything to feel complete. In detachment, we find freedom, not just freedom from the expectations of others, but freedom from the expectations we place on ourselves. And in that freedom we find peace, we find authenticity, and we find the kind of relationships that truly nourish us. So, release the need to control, to hold on, and to chase. Let life unfold naturally, and trust that the right people will show up, the right connections will be made, and the right opportunities will arise simply because you are living authentically, in alignment with your own truth. And when you let go of the need to grasp at everything around you, you will find that everything you truly need will come to you effortlessly.